Saint Ludmila was born into a princely family around 860. Her father, Slavibor, ruled in one of the smaller principalities, either directly in Bohemia, probably at Pisov Castle, in the vicinity of today's town of Mělník, or in nearby Luzice. She was raised a pagan who offered sacrifices to the Slavic gods. Ludmila was 15 when married to Duke Bořivoj, who was the ruler of central Bohemia and perhaps, sources suggest, a leader recognized de facto throughout Bohemia. The couple converted to Christianity through the efforts of St. Methodius, apostle of the Slavs, and they built Bohemia's first Christian church near Prague. Bořivoj tried to induce his people to accept Christianity. Their efforts to convert Bohemia to Christianity were initially not well received, and pagans drove them from their country for a time. Eventually, the couple returned and ruled for several years. Ludmila was married for about 14 years, and during that time became the mother of 3 sons and 3 daughters. When she was about 30 years old, she was widowed. Her husband was not even 40 years old when he departed this life, leaving his wife with 6 children, only 2 of whom are known to history, her 2 sons, Spytihněv and Vratislav. But she did not withdraw herself, as was customary. She took a very active part in politics. Many people did not like this and tried to deprive the widowed princess of power and influence over the ruling princely family. In the complicated circumstances of the later 9th century, Ludmila managed to sustain the family's influence until her eldest heir, Spitihněv, could take the reins of power on his own. At that time, Bohemia had extracted itself somewhat under the declining power of the Franconian and Moravian realms, and Spytihněv and his brother Vratislav consolidated the country's place in the Christian world by building churches, which still stand to this day, in Budik, the Romanesque Rotunda of St. Peter and Paul, and in Prague, St. George's Basilica. Yet Ludmila was soon to lose her sons and had to get back into frontline politics. She became the governess of Wenceslas, her grandson, who was ruled in his father's wake. However, disputes over upbringing and power led to conflict with Wenceslas's mother, Drahomira, the widow of Vratislav, who was then appointed regent. Taking advantage of the inexperience and youth of her son, Drahomira began to introduce pagan manners and customs in the country. She came to hate her mother-in-law and tried to destroy her. Ludmila tried to save herself from a drastic end by retreating to Tetín castle, either to stay in seclusion or planning to seek help from someone like her Bavarian allies. Drahomira sent 2 boyars, Tuna and Gaman, probably Norsemen, who strangled the duchess with her scarf. St. Ludmila was praying at the time. Ludmila was canonized shortly after her death. As part of the process of canonization, in 925, Wenceslas moved her remains to St. George's Basilica, Prague. She is venerated as patroness of Bohemia. She is considered to be a patron saint of Bohemia, converts, duchesses, those with problems with in-laws, educators and vintners, and widows. Over time, a convent was established on her burial site. Since many years have passed since St. Ludmila's death, it is not easy to find traces of her. However, a few traces do remain. Even today, you can still go to the promontory above the river Beroun to Tetín in central Bohemia and see the remains of the local fort. In the village Tetín, there is a church dedicated to St. Ludmila. It hadn't stood there during her own lifetime, however. It was built at a later time. Prince Wenceslas, grandson of St. Ludmila, had her remains transported to Prague and buried in the Basilica of St. George within the grounds of the Prague castle. She is buried there to this day. Her tomb can be found in the chapel of St. Ludmila in the southern nave of the basilica. However, her skull is kept separately as a rare relic in the treasury of the Cathedral of St. Vitus and is presented to the public only once a year, on 16 September, on her feast day. There is one more trace of the princely couple, Bořivoj I and St. Ludmila, within the grounds of the Prague castle. When you walk through the castle courtyard, you can see the remains of the Church of the Virgin Mary. This church was built by the couple after returning from Moravia after being baptized as Christians. It is the oldest Christian church in Prague. The cult of St. Ludmila gradually spread from Prague to the whole of Europe, and thanks to Czech compatriots, further into the world. Among the dozen of churches and chapels dedicated to St. Ludmila, you will find both older churches, such as the Neo-Gothic church in Prague's Náměstí Míru Square in the Vinohrady district, and new buildings. Several monasteries, wells, and springs are also dedicated to St. Ludmila. The most famous statue of St. Ludmila is the one standing in Prague on Charles Bridge. It was most likely created in the workshop of Matthias Bernhard Braun and shows Ludmila teaching her grandson Wenceslas how to read from a book. St. Ludmila is also part of the equestrian monument of St. Wenceslas in Prague's Wenceslas Square. The grandmother supervises her grandson on his right, cited by Saints Wojciech, Prokop, and Agnes of Bohemia. I hope you found this video interesting. Please consider giving it a thumbs up and perhaps subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. I plan on greatly expanding the content available on the channel, including podcasts of scripture commentary from the Church Fathers, book reviews, and additional videos on the lives of the saints, along with some analysis of economic issues from an Orthodox perspective. Thank you for watching this video, and wishing you a blessed day.